Hello, my name's Toby Haydock, and I've just done about 10 takes trying to come up with a more interesting or different way of saying that this is Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I watch a story, drop facts and observations, and try and guess what my special guest's favourite things are. But I couldn't think of one.
Hello Toby, it's Steve Cranford here. I'm a TV and radio broadcaster living at Wirrn down in West Sussex. Now, I'd like to thank you for letting me choose my favourite Doctor Who story to have a chat with you about. For me, this has to be the one I have the earliest strong memories for, which is the 1978 story, The Stones of Blood from the Key to Time season.
Hello everyone, this is my second attempt at an introduction. The first was interrupted by a sneeze, and I'd said nothing of import that was worth preserving. So I'm afraid the sneeze sent it, resulted in a Pamela Nash-esque edict to consign it to the furnace for all eternity. The furnace suggests devilish toasting going on, but actually it's very, very cold outside. Suitable atmosphere for the Stones. But it's not dark. It's not even videotape murky grey, because I record this of a morning, because these are snatched liaisons that we have, gentle listener, when my other half is out of the building. She's currently gone to record episodes of Coronation Street, so I'm redressing the karmic balance of 1980s Wednesday nights, whilst one half is off enjoying Coronation Street. The small minority are flying the flag for Doctor Who. So in this household, we are a mirror of 1980s television scheduling. But actually, this house, Doctor Who is outnumbering Corrie, because Bernard the dog is with me, looking expectantly, because he is owed a walk. So I'm getting Doctor Who out of the way before the walk. So I hope you all send Bernard your thanks for his patience. He's sort of resigned on the sofa next to me, going, I don't know what this thing you do on the people wall is. That's what he calls the television. It's not. It's a projector on a wall, and it's the people wall. He doesn't notice the people on the wall, but he does notice when it's reflected in the window, the French sort of door windows thing next to it. So he'll notice something going on in there, get slightly guard doggy about it, but he's remarkably blasé about the people on the people wall. But he knows that when it's on, we mean business. And I think he recognises the Doctor Who theme. I had a friend who had a rescue dog years and years ago, who used to bark at binmen. I think he'd been abused by binmen in the past, so had a bit of a problem with them, but always perked up and sat to attention on Saturday night when the Doctor Who theme played. He knew what the Doctor Who theme meant. It meant that my friend Dan and he would be glued to the sofa for the next 25 minutes, which is what I am going to be, as I say, as the wind rattles outside. It's so cold, the cup of tea I poured not very long ago has lost its fiery lustre and is at best lukewarm, and I don't have the robustest of mouths, so I tend to let my tea cool down before I drink it, and many people have finished their tea before I've started mine. But with the weather at the moment inside the house, we've done the heating off to save a few quid. Cups of tea go cold very, very quickly. I'm sure there's a Doctor Who story in that. What's happening, Doctor? Have you noticed? The tea's gone cold. Oh, we must be on the planet Dido. Oh, that's a pop song reference. Yes. Still got it. Right. As Pink said in 2005, let's get this party started. I won't tell you the reasons I know that. But anyway, let's crack on with this. Who'd have thought there'd be a reference to the song, is it called Thank You? By Dido, which is sampled, of course, in the Eminem song Stan, which is about a fan who goes mad, which is why people on the internet say I stan. What do people say? I stan the Tomorrow People, which means I'm a fan of the Tomorrow People. Don't know why I said the Tomorrow People, but I nearly said mortgage companies, and I've no idea why. This is sometimes what happens when what you're broadcasting is just a stream of consciousness, and sometimes your brain lets you down. But yeah, I didn't know that. I had to ask the audience at XS Malarkey what people meant when they said Stan, and I'm a fan of. So yeah, people say I stan Jodie and Bradley, which means they are a fan of the work of Jodie Whittaker and Bradley Walsh. It's how the young talk these days. If you're not young and you talk like that, I forgive the young, because the young do things that are new. If you're old, no, you could talk like that as well, but you won't be using language like that around my dinner table. But I'm not a stan of I'm not a stan of modern parlance. So anyway, let's crack on with part 3. Right, hang on, I just knocked the microphone. Part 3 of the Stones of Blood. And let's see if we're going to stan the change from hammer horror scares to trial by torch, trial by stroppy torch, as we enter the hyperspace part of David Fisher's 4-episode Doctor Who story, in the middle of the Key to Time season 16. And I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1. While we start, it is... I'm going to pick up, because she's been killed now, Elaine Ives Cameron as poor old Martha. So before she departs from us, I mean, she's gone. She was gone in episode 2, so I won't have an opportunity to talk about her in episode 3. It's worth noting that she also cropped up in an early Big Finish, The Stones of Venice. So she clearly was only ever able to appear in Doctor Who stories called The Stones of something. But she's I'm afraid she's had her skull crushed in, and is also no longer with us in real life. So here we go. It's been revealed that the beautifully eyed Susan Engel, as Vivian Fay, is the baddie. And sorry, I was just going slightly out of reach of the microphone there, because I'm trying to make sure you have that. It's loud enough for me to hear it, but it's not loud enough to drown out my voice on your recording. This is a lovely set, actually, from John Stout. I've had a message, and my Patreon isn't up, but somebody has messaged me and pointed out, no, I'm not going to be able to let this pass now, so I need to find it. That John Stout was on Phil Newman, the designer extraordinaire. He's not only an extraordinaire designer, Phil Newman. He is also the guy who's told us pretty much everything we need to know about Doctor Who designers, and he's interviewed those who he could track down. That he's never found out anything about John Stout. So I feel slightly less guilty for not knowing anything, because if Phil doesn't know, then nobody's gonna. And this is, of course, where we find out that John Stout is the uncle or next door neighbour of somebody that listens to this podcast. If they are, do write in. It's Paul. Hi, Paul. Says yes. I just asked Phil Newman about John Stout, and he said he could never find anything out. So that's a shame, because it's always nice to know things about Doctor Who people and to get their insight now, and especially because that set that he has. With the light, with the swinging light, which has all the portraits in it, is rather a good one. I do like, one of my favourite bits, I think, of the Stones of Blood is the shots of the Ogre, which that must have probably been the biggest production headache when they were considering doing this story. How do we have stones moving about? And I think the stones are a successful creation. They're not unlike the Triffids in Day of the Triffids, where they're quite tall and they have to sort of be wheeled about. I do enjoy the BBC production of Day of the Triffids. I remember that being produced by David Maloney, which I remember being... Is it produced by David Maloney? I think it was. If it wasn't, don't write in. It was definitely directed by Ken Hannum, Australian director who never directed Doctor Who. Oh, the incidental music has just joined in with a joke there, and if that had happened during the McCoy era, we would have been up in arms. But somehow, because it's from further back, it's perfectly acceptable. And Pertwee also would have done this sort of bullfighting sort of stuff as well. The poor Stone. But that's a sort of effectively mounted sequence. And I like that touch of you seeing the sort of light of the stone disappearing beneath the sea. How do you kill a stone? You see, that's why they're such a good idea for a monster, because you cannot bargain with a stone, and those ones look like they could crush you. I remember, isn't there a sequence in one of the Sinbad films? I'm sure we saw it at the cinema. We didn't go to the cinema very often. Where is it? A friendly minotaur pulls a stone out so they can get through a rock cave, and it crushes him. Yes. Anyway, big heavy stones. They're such a good idea for a monster because they're hard. They could crush you. They are inscrutable. You can't communicate with a stone, but they're easily recognizable. I think that starting point. Let's have some giant stones that suck your blood as the bad guys is a really good starting point for the Doctor Who story. But obviously, if you have stones, you can't. They can't be the main character unless you start giving them voice. So you have to have a human villain. And you have here Shakespearean actress Susan Engel, who is no mean performer, and the rare thing of a female villain in Doctor Who, and does a great job. Oh yes, one of the stones is missing, and I have ordered also at the suggestion of various listeners, and under the direction of various listeners, I've got now Children of the Stones, and I have Escape into the Night, but I don't know if I'm going to have time to watch them before I watch episode 4. I suppose they would be useful in terms of informing my commentary, but I can't give myself homework as well as doing these, because, as you may have noticed, if you are a subscriber to Patreon, I'm a little bit behind, which is why I'm doing this in the morning before the dog walk. So it's still, I always think that this goes directly into hyperspace, but we're a decent amount into the episode, and we've had the bullfight on the cliff edge, which I suppose is fine. How do I feel about the comedic element of that? Well, I mean, it's Doctor Who's comedy is what saves it from being po-faced, and so you have to allow the show to have fun. And the problem with having fun is spoken like a true Doctor Who fan. I think you'll find the problem with having fun is sometimes you have to sacrifice seriousness and accuracy, which is often what happens when one does a joke and one is followed on social media by Doctor Who fans. Is you'll do a joke and somebody will point out the factual inaccuracy of it, thus undermining the fact that it is actually a joke, and the factual inaccuracy could be part of the joke. But there is no joke, as Vira would say, when you're talking about Doctor Who, a program famed for its sense of humour. But there we go. I always like it when the Doctor builds a gadget. I always think the Doctor should be able to build a gadget, even though gadgets can often be a cheat in Doctor Who. But as sort of, Russell says about the psychic paper, you don't want a Doctor to be blocked by a door. You could take longer to get out of some bits, but if the bits aren't actually the main focus and you want to get on with the story, the fact that the Doctor's somebody who can build stuff, I think, is rather fun. Still not in hyperspace, which, as I say, I always think of this as a game of two halves. But yes, the bullfight. The thing about comedy is, and we're losing sight of this these days. He said, so I've started to say young people without any sense of irony, which is slightly worrying me, everybody, because I want to be hip and cool. Now I don't want to be hip and cool, but I don't want to be. I look in the mirror. I look like I look like Mole from Wind in the Willows auditioning for the role of an Open University presenter, and I don't know when that happened. I've had a YT watching with Nail and I. Do you know what I mean? I've been to discos, but I used to have that thing of being a slightly fuddy-duddy for somebody my age, an older person in a young man's body, but now the body is that of an old man. And I'm not sure how I feel about this. I'm older than Tom Baker is in Doctor Who, and I'm not happy with that situation. You see, stones do not age, but people do. Why am I talking about that? It's because I can't remember. See, that's the other thing, age. But yes, yes, that's right. Humor. The difficult thing about humor is that it goes wrong because part of telling jokes and part of the frisson, the danger of course everything's relative. It's relative danger of humor is that humor often straddles a line or teeters along a line, and part of the fun of it is that sort of unspoken, oh God, are they going to go too far, or are they, and of course then the relief when they don't. Humor plays games with expectation and expression, and in this case, the case of the bullfighter thing, in terms of tone, it sort of teeters on the verge of sending it up or not. And of course, if something doesn't send something up, you're sort of relieved, and humour obviously lightens the tension in horrific situations, but it can also undermine the situation, and that it means it's dependent entirely on how it is played. And one could argue actually and go, well, maybe the composer should have reined himself in, because if the joke is being done, we don't need to be told by the music. And I know that's a complaint people have of Murray Gold's music. I like Murray Gold's music very much, but I am in sympathy with people who say, look, I know it's a sad scene, the actors are being sad and the lines are being sad, I don't need the music to fill in for me that I should be sad as well. And the jokes particularly, I think, there's a few plinky plonky, or this is funny refrains in modern Doctor Who that punctuate the humorous scenes, and I can see why people might tire of those or not approve of those. So that jokey sequence with the bullfight, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because it is done with a sense of fun, and I don't want to be one of those. Well, Doctor Who is very serious, and the older I get, actually, the less uptight I get about Doctor Who, and the more I go, the whole point of Doctor Who is that it is fun. But saying that, I don't want the people who are making it to have so much fun that they keep me out of the joke. That is self-indulgent, and that's another line that humour has to tread, is that you must have fun doing it, but not at the exclusion of the viewer, so that you seem so that you're having a great time and you've forgotten that we'd like to have some too, and that can seem a bit sort of smug and conceited if you're not careful. I'm not saying that did, but it was it's tonally, I think, that idea of going, he's fighting for his life within the story. The Doctor is fighting for his life. So would you have fun when you're fighting for your life by going, this is a bit like a bullfight, isn't it? Except it's a stone in my coat and not a bull and a matador's cloak. But the viewers will see the similarity and be chuffed by it. That for all sorts of reasons, that takes you out of the drama. It means that the Doctor's not really taking the threat seriously, although the argument could be the genius of the Doctor is that he undermines serious situations with humour, and it's his way of coping. So it does work within the context of the story as well, if you want it to. But as I say, a fine line. This is my stuff. K9 zapping stones with his laser. I think the way that they make the stones glow in the dark, stones glowing in the dark. They are. I love the Ogre. Nobody really talks about the Ogre. Do people not think of them as a good special effect? I think they're a reasonable special effect. I mean, they're probably on wheels, aren't they? Scooting along like that. But I think that's perfectly fine. That is a very good shot, and again, an unusual visual. I know there are shots like it, like in the sand miner and things like that, but it feels, this spaceship itself with the background again is like the dark cupboard and like the moonlit cliff edge. They're shots that have a particularly distinct visual flavour that I only associate with the Stones of Blood. So it is a slightly anomalous story for me. It's one that it has its sort of unique visual, I wouldn't say style, because as I mentioned last episode, I don't think it's necessarily coherent, but it has a new eye, if you like. What are you doing, Bernard? Bernard is Bernard is so starved of attention. He's trying to get something to give me as a gift. He's a service dog, like Canine. He's a service dog, so he has a job of work to do sometimes, but he doesn't need to do it when it's just me and him. But of course, because he's a dog and a creature of habit and training, if he feels like he hasn't done enough, he will occasionally go and get something to give to me, even though it was perfectly happy where it was. What that has to do with this, that's his equivalent of zapping extraterrestrial blood-sucking stones with his laser. That's his role. But you can have some time off, Bernard. It's all right. So the story has taken a real sort of turn now. I wonder what the thinking was to say, well, let's move the story away. I mean, I think it's always worthwhile trying to. That noise is Bernard scratching his ear, by the way. It's not some Ogre knocking on the door. And I think again that contrast. I always think Doctor Who works if there's contrast and juxtaposition. It's often a clash of styles, humour and horror, and storytelling and tone and all those sorts of things that clash and yet meld. See, that's what I mean about the visual. I don't really see other spaceships done like that, because I think the fringing's not so bad. So it's not like the spaceships in, say, Nightmare of Eden. And that background is, it's not a star background like we're used to in a lot of Doctor Who visuals. So that sort of kaleidoscopic light thing going on is slightly unusual. And I do you know what? I love a drawn-on laser beam. And I like the fact that, because sometimes with Canine's laser, they have to sort of do it so that it sort of shoots up at a rather odd angle and not the angle that he's pointing his nose at, in order to connect with where they want the laser beam to connect with. But because Canine was shot close up there, you just have the beam coming out, in a sensible direction. Love these scenes of the Ogre, and Professor Rumford is great. And is this the really good bit where Barry exhausted? He does that. He does some real acting in this one, John Leeson. I rather like it. I mean, it's not right, but he is supposed to be a robot dog, but it does kind of work. Now I love this bit. It's brilliant, isn't it? That means finding more blood, and she does this really well. I love the way that she does that, and there's something really evocative about that, about the fact that, okay, we're fine because the stones have gone away, but for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Karmically, that means it's probably bad news for somebody else. And this is great. I mean, going into this, I pretty much knew that the campers scene would be the scene. I mean, I quite like the fact that when he comes out, he does his fly up. What does that suggest? I don't know, but it just seems unusually grown up for Doctor Who. People, I think it's probably the only example of somebody doing up their flies in the whole history of Doctor Who. That's a thing, isn't it? But sadly, James Murray, there is an actor today called James Murray, but it's a different one. This James Murray was, I think, the son of the DJ Pete Murray, and he sadly committed suicide not too long after this. And this is Shirin Taylor, who I remember being shocked to read in the Doctor Who magazine episode guide, was one of the campers, because at the time she was on telly all the time. She was a regular in Coronation Street. And in all sorts of other stuff, because she has that wonderful dusky voice, and she's the customer in Dragonfire, of course, as well. But she was very much a well-known face. So I was quite surprised that she played such a small role. In fact, I've done a commentary on this episode with her for the sake of that 90-second scene. But isn't it beautiful? And I remember Russell T Davies choosing the campus scene in a Doctor Who magazine special where, the great and good of Doctor Who fandom, a Wirrn, wrote a page each on the Doctor Who story that they were allocated or chose. And Russell chose Stones of Blood and used the campus scene. And he's right. It's there just to show that Doctor Who, this kids program that is fun and has people doing matador antics with a stone on a cliff top, and has this insolent, eccentric time traveler who breaks all the rules, is about, has death and jeopardy. It's not like, the kids programs that were purely kids programs that were on, children's BBC or whatever. It wasn't called that when I was younger, but you knew that there were programs that were kids programs, even ones that, aspired to be exciting adventure things like Children's Film Foundation stuff and that, but were still very much for kids. Whereas Doctor Who dealt with sometimes quite grisly death, and yet has to be containable. And that scene exemplifies that. You have two people who never even meet the Doctor. They don't even get to sort of have met Doctor Who on their bucket list, because their bucket is well and truly kicked. The minute we see them, really, they are there to die. And it's really sad because they're young and they're cute and they haven't done anything wrong. They're entirely innocent, and it's not like neither of them do anything stupid. There's not that, like, I'm going to leave you here and I'm going to go out on my own or anything like that. There's no sort of thematic payback for anybody. They are there just to die. And that visual of the hand turning into a skeleton is a relatively basic and straightforward one. And then we have a close-up of their faces as that is happening. And again, her hand's already turned into a skeleton, but they're both still non-skeletal. So that suggests the process, starts at the hand and sort of goes along their bodies, which is pretty horrible. And he dies, trying to pull her off and save her. There's so much going on there in a scene that lasts for 90 seconds or so. It's beautifully written. It's beautifully lit. It's very, very straightforwardly written. It's its beauty is its simplicity. Its art lies in the fact that it is there. I always think that Vivian Fay has a very low-cut dress, doesn't she? I don't know how that stays there, but there we go. There is. I do find the Calliac quite funny. The Cessair of Diplos quite funny, and I'm not sure if for the right reason. She has a sort of slight air of disdain about the whole thing. And there's something glorious about having a very serious and intelligent actress covered in silver paint with a very low cut dress when she looks straight at the camera. And she has magnificent eyes. She's beautiful, isn't she, Susan Engel? Those eyes, you'd cast her in everything for those eyes alone. They're really bewitching, and it's a bold choice. And again, that's another visual there with that sort of windy light, if you like, as she disappears, and her face taking up the whole screen and her looking directly at camera. That's another sort of bespoke Stones of Blood visual flavour. But yeah, the scene of the campers was, I think, always going to be my choice for this, even though there's some hot stone action. I do love this, and the stones work as a visual within hyperspace as well. And we've not had much Megara. Oh, she's gonna have the cliffhanger now. Oh no, and the cliffhanger goes to that strange visual of the hyperspace ship again. That is, that odd, slightly difficult to discern, out of focus light background. Anyway, I'm not going to rush for my remote control like I did last time, because iPlayer has clearly been programmed by people who understand that Doctor Who fans like to watch the credits. Now, I'm sure that will have involved somebody having a word, and I'm very pleased about that. So thank you for understanding your audience and for respecting the fact that the people that made these programs deserve their credit, and that the people that watch these programs like to read them. So that is the end. That was me accidentally cutting off the credits because my remote control is on my phone, and I have to. You don't need to know. You don't need to know. I know I have a remote control on my phone. I don't quite know how that works either. But listen, that was part 3 of the Stones of Blood. And much as I love the Augury, and I've got a feeling they will probably be my bonus thing, because they are a strand that runs through the story. They are indeed the title of the story. But the fact that they're blood-sucking stones, the fact that they're very well built and they look pretty hefty. They're slightly wobbly when they move sometimes, maybe, but I think on the whole they're a good construction. I love it's probably front axial projection. Is it the light, or is it a light inside? I don't know, but it's a good light. The lighting effect works really well, and they're blood-sucking stones, and they smash people's skulls, and they hover in the background behind the Cessair of Diplos there at the end of the episode, looking good in hyperspace. But they also look great, smashing through doors and being held off by K9 at the stone circle and in the night and against the night sky, or even sinking down into the ocean. They are fantastic. I love the stones. I love Susan Engel's eyes. I think they are bewitching, and she is a sort of witch, isn't she? So that's a good choice. It's very good casting. But there was only going to be one choice, and that is the campus scene. Economical, deadly, well stated. A moment of cruel random death in a show about a space vagrant saving the universe and having fun while they do so. So, Stephen Cranford, what are you going to choose? Surely, if it's good enough for Russell T Davies, Stephen, it's good enough for you and I. So, Steve, here he is.
Another very strong childhood memory of mine, and it's actually doesn't progress the plot that much and could easily have been cut, but it's a gruesome thing. And that's when the campers wake up to discover that there's an Augury parked outside their tent, and they go up to investigate it, and they touch it, and I still remember the horror of the fact that the hand turned into a skeletal hand, and you then presume that the poor people were devoured. Amazing, really. I mean, looking at it now, it's quite cheap, but great impact for a 6-year-old, and amazing, really, that they showed that sort of thing at Saturday tea time. But there you go. That's 1978 for you.
But I mean, I think that the art lies. I'm gonna John Cleese and Eleanor Bronitt once more. The art lies in the fact that it is such a cheap and simple technique, isn't it? That it's a crossfade between Sharon Taylor's hand and the hand of a skeleton. And skeletons were one of those things that, when you're a kid, you sort of go, oh, skeleton, scary. That's that's a dead person, whatever. It's so simple, and yet it embeds itself in the mind of the child. Stephen's a grown man now, and he still remembers watching it the very first time. And I love that. I love the ingenuity of the storytelling. I love the ingenuity of going, how can we make this as scary as possible with the resources that we have? And and scripturally as well, we need the stones to bugger off. Okay, well, they're going to go and get blood from somewhere else. Well, great, let's show that. And that just means creating a couple of characters to die. And Doctor Who has a rich history of that. I remember reading an interview with Robert Holmes where he said, I only invented McDermott in Terror of the Ortons in order to kill him off. And quite often you get characters who come in simply to be disposed of. And isn't that rather glorious? And I'm not a sadistic person at all, but there's something about the catharsis of watching Jeopardy in television programs that means we get all of that excitement. And scary situations are exciting. That's why after a near miss of a car accident or something, you have your body feels adrenaline. You feel that adrenaline going through. Adrenalized, I don't know. And that's why we watch entertainment, to recreate that. That's why, we watch humour in order to stimulate those endorphins, And again, as I say, humour often, the laughter comes as a release. Humour can come from tense situations. That's why it's so difficult to judge. And this is why I started talking about young people at the beginning, that I trailed off and went everywhere else, is that there seems to me sometimes now a reaction against humour that starts off making you feel uncomfortable and maybe takes you to a place that you don't want to go. But that is where we find out where the line is. But that is also, the finding out of the line is part of the process that produces the laugh. But if you go into it looking to police the performer of the humour and looking to go, is there something in this that I can mine for unpleasantness? Well, you're not allowing the performer to flirt with the idea of things that might be unpleasant in order to then produce that laugh. Now, I know there are also purveyors of humour who go to places where they deliberately will target minorities or people's deeply held beliefs, and somehow, sometimes just for the sake of putting them down or being unkind. And I don't have time for that either. But ideas of what is tasteful, or ideas of where we should go, or ideas of where our own sensibilities might have hypocrisies within them that are being pricked by somebody, those are interesting and worthwhile places to go. And if they're producing a laugh at the same time, that is a worthwhile endeavour, and we shouldn't be too uptight about it, and actually should sometimes, instead of, looking at the person doing the joke, actually look at ourselves, because that's what good humour does. I'm not saying that Tom Baker pretending to be a matador has any pretense to any of that level of things, but it does speak to a case of finding where the line is. There will have been conversations going, is this just a little bit silly? And as I say, I'm not sure. I would tend to always sympathise with the person who's trying to make something entertaining, but I also sympathise with those who might watch that sequence and go, that's taking it slightly too far. That's sending it up just a little bit, because in a deadly situation, you wouldn't go, well, will this be witty? Which is clearly what Tom Baker did in rehearsals. But anyway, Stephen liked the death of two attractive young people. Of course he did. And so did I. That was my choice. And indeed, Russell T Davies's choice when he wrote up this story. So it was always going to be the death of the death of the two campers. So they will be trapped on top of the favourite list forever. Ha 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 ha. My tea's really gone cold now, so I'm going to stick Bernard in the back of a trunk and drive. No, I'm not. I'm just going to take him for a walk round the park, where hopefully there will be no there will be no tents with two skeletons outside them after a wild and windy night here in South Manchester. So thank you very much for listening. Let me just see if there were more comments on part 2. Adam Parkin says in the great sausage sandwich debate, he only cuts his sausages lengthwise, quite right, and prefers mustard. But my sister and I recently had a conversation about sandwiches because we only butter one slice of bread, whereas our spouses butter both. I'm definitely a both slices butter. I eat too much butter. In fact, I've been told I've got to stop having butter because butter doesn't last very long when I'm on the butter. It's a point of contention over who does it. I'm very much butter on both slices of the bread, and I'm not casual about I butter to every corner. Every piece of the bread gets covered. It has to be an even and complete spread of butter. Chris Arkle says Danny Baker used to play the sausage sandwich game on Radio 5 on a Saturday morning. Not a phallic question, just red, brown, or no sauce at all. Oh, I thought it was bacon sandwich. Is it Danny Baker sausage sandwich? I like Danny Baker, good broadcaster. Does your Caliac ride a bicycle, David Green? One of my favourite lines in Doctor Who. It is an excellent line. It's a very Doctor Who line, invoking an ancient Celtic goddess and riding a bicycle. And Matt Metabilis III did indeed do a forage in his loft to locate the target novel. I pointed this out in the post-credits because he'd said that David Fisher always wrote very good target novels of his stories, and I pointed out that Stones of Blood was actually Terence Dicks, and Matt has gone through his boxes and indeed has confirmed that Terence wrote Stones of Blood, so he's sending Terence an apology for giving David Fisher the credit for the book of the Stones of Blood, although David Fisher then did do his own version for BBC audiobooks, didn't he? So listen, that is the end of part 3 of the Stones of Blood. I hope you enjoyed it for its unique visuals, the humorous element, and indeed the death of 2 young people who shouldn't have gone camping and certainly shouldn't have had their flies undone. That sort of thing only leads to trouble. Well, thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydoke, and on this occasion, my silent partner in crime, Bernard the dog. Our special guest was Steve Cranford, who can be found at SB Cranford on various social media sites. I'm grateful to Stephen and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Tim Arding, Nigel Bromley, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Peter Chamberlain, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelp, Paul Dunn, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Paul Harris, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Ian K. McLachlan, Philip Marsh, Nathan Martin, Roland Moore, Rick Moran, Kevin Murdoch, Graham Knott, Adam Parker, Barry Platt, Risto Matti Sarillo, Frank Shales, Nick Tedston, Neil Tate, Richard Straw, Gavin McLean, Christopher Meredith, Rob Leonard, Ronald Hayden, Peter Harness, James Curray-Smith, Peter Burns, Stephen Moffat, and Rupert Herfindahl. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Well, if you'd like to be among the names that I nearly ran out of theme tune to say out loud, then you can go to patreon.com/Toby Haydoke, where one of the perks for subscribing is to have your name read out on the credits. You can start subscribing for as little as £3 a month, and for that, as well as your name getting read out, which it does a different frequency depending on the tier you are on, you can also get bonus features, advance releases, exclusive AMAs, and content from behind the scenes of various DVD and Blu-ray extras that I do. And all of that is available at the lowest tier, £3 a month. You can get a 10% discount on that if you sign up for a year. There's a 10% discount on every tier if you sign up for a year in one go. And for that, you get 3 sort of content releases per week, plus pictures of my dog Bernard on a Tuesday. So he won't just be, he's not like Maris from Fraser or Captain Mannering's wife. He actually exists and you can see him, but only on Patronville. That's not the real draw, but some people, it is their favourite thing, and that wasn't the plan. I just thought it would be fun one Tuesday to put up a picture of my dog, and it generated far more interest than the monthly AMA where I answer any question you want to throw at me. And as I say, the exclusive releases, behind the scenes features, and occasional interviews with Doctor Who alumni as well. Patreon.com/Toby Haydoke. If you don't want to do the monthly thing, you can go to kofi.com/Toby Haydoke to donate every now and again, or if there's a release that you've particularly enjoyed. It is the way that we self-employed content creators / artists / rent-a-gobs generate income these days. I'm a working stand-up comedian. You can find me live in Manchester every Tuesday at XS Malarkey Comedy Club, but I throw stuff out here, and I'm also obviously an actor and a writer, and I just make stuff. And if you like it and would like to buy me time in which to do it properly, then supporting via these funding models is kind of the way that things are happening in the 21st century. I resist it too. It all seems very weird to me, but it's working quite nicely, and the Patreon community is a lovely one. So if you do dip your toes in, I hope you find that it's very comfortable and a nice place to wallow. So patreon.com/Toby Haydoke or kofi.com/Toby Haydoke. But you can support these ways other than financial ones, because I know how expensive everything is, and the world is going to hell in a handcart at the moment. And sometimes all we need is just the warmth of human kindness, and I am no exception. And your kindness can be expressed in the form of 5-star reviews on all of the internet platforms, because they really help to get the word about these out there and to increase their visibility, which means that the endeavour has been worthwhile and is worth, again, the time and investment of doing it properly, which I hope I have done and am doing. So 5 stars and reasons why you have given those 5 stars, a few lines of review saying what you like about these on all of the platforms, especially on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, those sorts of places are really, really helpful, and spread the word in cyberspace. And I will be very, very grateful to you. And I might occasionally be able to feed Bernard, who's twitching away beside me now. He's gone to sleep. If this podcast has had the same effect on you as it has on him, you will currently be dreaming about running in a field, which, if his twitchiness and the odd little noise that he's making or anything to go by, suggest he's having a very stimulating time. But not as a result of anything I'm doing. So there we go. Everyone's a critic, even Bernard. Do you like social media? Well, if so, you can follow me at Toby Haydoke on Twitter. These podcasts have their own feed at Haydoke Podcasts, and I'm on Instagram at Toby.Haydoke, where I'm getting better at making videos and where I'm putting some of the stand-up and various other bits and bobs up, and also behind-the-scenes photos of Blu-ray and DVD features, but not as many as you get on Patreon. And I also have a Facebook page. So if we want to get with the modern thing, people are telling me to do TikTok as well. I think that might be one social media platform too far. But you never know. You never know. We've got to fling it out in all directions these days. But I'm currently flinging on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, which seems plenty to me. If you fancy being flung at, those are the places to go. Right, I've got to go and walk this dog because he deserves the stimulation of physical activity, which is, frankly, the highlight of his day, the sniffs and smells of the outdoors, although I will suspect there will be a few more trees down in the park, because as I record this, the storms are whipping up around the whole of the UK, so I hope everybody is safe and well. I mean, by the time this is out to the general public, hopefully the sun will be shining and all will be well, but I record this as the wind is whipping up and storms with various names are causing havoc throughout the land, and we've lost quite a few trees in the park. But anyway, let's go and brave the elements, and I will. I get invigorated by the old bashing, winds being windswept, and having the endorphins that are stimulated by the elements swirling around. So I'm going to wrap up warm and take this lovely fella, my chum, my best mate Bernard, who the distillation of pure joy of as he scampers around, smelling the new smells and getting that physical exercise that he needs. It's a great leveler. So I'm off to do that. No jokes there. I love my dog, and I'm not a great fan of going outside and interrupting my day, having to be in the cold and not be doing work and all of that sort of thing. But it's actually probably very good for me. And when I'm out there, and I've got no choice but to watch the innocent joy of a creature doing what he's driven to do by instinct, is there's a purity to that, and I do like it. And I bet if I was attacked by some plasma draining stones, he'd do his best to fend them off, even though he's a cute looking boy. But actually, I'm not sure I want to put that to the test, because he might just bugger off and leave me to it. But I've anthropomorphized him enough to think he would bravely stand his ground. He barks at the postman. I'm sure he'd try and see off an augury. All right. But he's not barking at the postman to make him go away. He's barking to say, Dad, the postman's here, even though I'm very aware of that, because we have a door knocker and I'm walking towards the door. But he still tells me. So, but let's not put him to the test with the blood-sucking stones, because I wouldn't want my two last thoughts to be, wow, the augury are real, and two, I'm very disappointed in my dog. You never disappoint me, Bernard. Never disappoint